Hello, everybody. Hi, Daniela. Hi, Ray. Welcome, Jennifer. We are so happy that you are here with us tonight.
Hi
Welcome,
guys.
Nick. Uh,
Hey.
we are going to give a few minutes for people to hop on, and then we will probably do introductions and all that fun stuff. But I hope everybody is having a great Friday night. We're so happy you joined us here. Nick and I are going to talk tonight about sustainability and how it relates to reselling. And Nick loves this topic, so I knew he would be a great guest to come on and talk. And what is your major, Nick?
Yeah, so for people who don't know me, I'm I am in college. My college major is retail merchandising. So I'm effectively going to school to be a buyer, a clothing buyer for a company, but my minor is in sustainability and sustainable like supply chain and business practices and all that fun junk. And so the topic of sustainability as it pertains to the fashion industry is one of my passions in life. And it's one of the reasons why I love reselling so much. And so it's really
Yes.
cool.
So funny enough, this interaction that Nick and I are having right now, or maybe the 10 minutes before we signed on, is the first time we've actually chatted. Aside from Instagram. And I was just saying to Nick how I have been stalking him for a while, and he assured me that it wasn't stalking if it was, via Instagram. So
I think my exact words were, it's not stalking until you get to the LinkedIn level.
true. Well, I do have a LinkedIn, so maybe
I was telling you, some people have gone all the way to connecting with me on LinkedIn, which I mean, at that point, knock yourself out. But
my LinkedIn is so boring. I actually just got on LinkedIn, like, I don't know. I guess when I got my website, I went on. I never, ever, ever check it. Hey, friends. Hi, Lisette. Hi, Denali. How's everybody doing? Thanks for joining us tonight.
hi, guys. Thanks for coming.
I have all of Nick's information listed below if you want to check him out. He is now also on YouTube, which makes me so happy. I love his like front porch hauls. I I love when like the wind blows something, or like the neighbors are like chatting, or the kids are yelling and stuff like that.
Or the cricket that only goes when I'm talking.
You handle it all very well, I think.
Yeah, I always give people a fair warning at the beginning, so they're not like, what was that noise in the background? Like, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Focus on the clothes I'm showing you, and it'll all be good.
Or sometimes I'll be talking, like pretend like this is the camera, like I'll be talking, but my gaze will be like over here because my neighbors will be doing something absolutely just crazy on their front porch. Or the people, so for a long time our neighborhood didn't have kids in it. Like there's a lot of people my age, because all the houses in our neighborhood were built,
they're like aging.
were built like, and then people had kids right after they built their house, which is what my family did. And so there were all like older kids, but there were no little kids. But now this family moved in across the street and they have 7 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Like a lot of kids. So now it's always like chaos in the background of my videos, but it also kind of makes me happy to see just like little kids around again. But yeah.
It is nice. I feel like my neighborhood is aging too, as I am. And I miss the little ones around. It is nice. But kudos to you, because I tried to film one video outside, and like the outdoor elements, the sun was in my eyes. Like I just couldn't do it. So you have perfected it. It's fun. It's nice to see something outside. So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. All right. So one of the things I kind of gave Nick and I homework, although he didn't really have to do the homework because he knows a lot about sustainability. So I guess I gave myself the homework. I wanted to talk today about the documentary, The True Cost. And I watched it last night. Well, I've watched it before, but I rewatched it. And I also I messaged Nick last night, a documentary called Minimalism. And it kind of really tied into fast fashion and just the amount of stuff we all have. And I am about as far away from a minimalist as you can get. And my husband is a minimalist. So it's been an interesting 25 years together, but I'm trying. But I think this profession also lends itself to, bulking up on stuff. So even within my profession, I feel like, do I really need that, as I do with things in my life?
Yeah, and on the front end here for all you guys watching, and I'll recap this later. If you're interested in watching this documentary that we're about to just like talk about a bunch about, and you're like, what the heck? It's on YouTube for free.
Mhm.
Um, there's like a free version and a paid for version. So I don't know if the free version is like bootlegged, but
Like,
like,
yeah. Oh, I don't know.
but I watched it last night again. So it works. So
Okay, good.
there's a free version on YouTube.
So the reason I ended up watching minimalism first was because when I went into Netflix to watch The True Cost, it didn't pop up. So I'm like, oh, I guess I'll watch this. And like an hour and a half later, I'm like, I really should have tried a little harder to watch The True Cost. But I had seen it before. And the minimalism documentary was pretty interesting too. So then I just spoke into my remote and I said, The True Cost documentary. And then it just popped up and I watched it.
Yeah,
So,
I know for
yeah.
sure it's free on YouTube, but it's called The True Cost. It was made in 2014, so it is, well, it's 6 years old.
Okay.
And so when you watch it, it's really interesting to think about perspective as well when you're watching it, because you're watching it at a perspective at the time when fast fashion was at its peak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to say that it's not huge now, but that was when it was at its peak growth.
I would say there's so much more awareness now in companies that
Well,
are
there's just so much. Well, we can talk about that later. But
okay.
their awareness, consumer awareness, yes. Company awareness, yes and no.
Current day
Awareness,
you're
yes.
talking, Nick?
What?
You're talking current day?
Yeah.
Okay.
But back in 2014, the fast fashion industry was at its like peak exponential growth. It was the fastest growing sector in the fashion industry. It was just this thing that had come about less than 10 years before, and it was just growing. And so it's really interesting when you watch the documentary, knowing that it's from that point in time, and then kind of comparing and contrasting that just in your own head with where we're at today. It's this really interesting thing to think about. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the documentary is really moving. And I feel like at times almost upsetting when you see the level of waste, or you see, it kind of follows that one woman in Bangladesh and, what it takes for her to get to work, and then leaving her child behind, and the low wages and the poor conditions. And it's just everything about it. And then you watch them at the sewing machines and you think like, that's for like a $6 shirt from H&M, like literally blood, sweat, and tears. And it's almost, I feel ashamed like watching it and thinking of how much I consume on a daily basis. And it really, if nothing else, I feel like my takeaway is just learning it's almost like when you eat a good meal and you take the time to prepare it, and maybe it's organic, or maybe it's just all the love that goes into a meal versus fast food, and it's almost like respecting the meal when you eat it. And just same with clothing, and I feel like, I don't know, it's changed me a little bit. I'm far from perfect, but it's definitely something I want to work on, which is why I wanted to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because that's one of the big points that's made by a psychologist that they interviewed during the whole film. But I'm going to back up for a second and talk about the man who created the film. His name's escaping my head at the moment.
I have it right here. Directed by Andrew Morgan, who wrote for, that's the director, who wrote for the Huffington Post.
Yep.
Traveled to 13 countries to collect all this information. So
the very interesting thing about it is he had no affiliation with the fashion industry whatsoever. He wasn't a fashionable consumer. That wasn't his line of work. It wasn't his line of study. So he came into this with not a blind perspective, but he came into it to learn without a biased perspective of somebody in the fashion industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what makes it so interesting, because they do share perspectives of different people within the documentary, like a good documentary should. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's what made it so effective and so commanding, is that when they produced it in such a way that commanded a visceral reaction from the people who watch it, mm-hmm. who connected what they're wearing now, or the places that they shop, to the places and the conditions of which those things are made. And so I think that's why it was such a effective film.
Powerful, very powerful.
And but going back to what you said, one of the psychologists that they interviewed in the film was talking about this general shift that we've had over time from buying clothing out of necessity or as something that you I can't remember the exact term that they used. It was so good, and I wrote it down somewhere, but I can't. But the gist of it was your clothing has gone from buying a necessity, something that we use, clothing and shelter and food, to something that we buy out of want, as something that we buy with the idea of we can wear this once and get rid of it or throw it away or discard it or not even think about it ever after we wear the Forever 21 dress to a cocktail party, and then
Right.
2 days later,
I think we're on the same wavelength, because I think it was what it used to be. He was calling it consumptuism.
Yes, consumptuism. The shift from
the shift from what you use,
yes,
to what you use up.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
We're at least we're pulling the same points, because these were things that stood out to me. And it says it's getting people to treat the things they use as things that they use up. So yeah, that consumption as opposed to useful.
Yeah, and it ties in. So there's this concept that they talk about a lot about in modern. I talk a lot about. I wrote a whole paper on it actually, but it's called conspicuous consumption. And it's this idea that we as people buy more and more and more things. We amass more things. And the idea is that by doing so, we are commanding more of a social power position. We are being cooler, or we're looked at cooler because we have these new things, and that we're having this constant rotation of different clothing at all times, and that it only matters on the front end of what you're buying and how you're buying it, and it doesn't matter at all what you're doing with it after the fact. And so I think that idea ties really well together, and I think that's very kind of similar intertwined idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to read a couple of the things that freaked me out in this. It says that we consume, and again, this was in 2014. So I'm assuming it's more than that now, but maybe not, because maybe now people are more in tune with the morale behind it, or morality. So anyways, we consume 400% more than we bought 2 decades ago. Today, we purchase over 80 billion pieces of clothing each year. That's what it was, 80 billion pieces of clothing each year, 400% more than we bought 2 decades ago. And then the average American throws away 82 pounds of textile waste each year, adding to more than 11 million tons of textile waste from the US alone. I can't even get my head around those numbers.
It's inconceivable. It's absolutely mind-boggling thinking about how much we, as people in developed countries, waste. And then most people don't think about then the side effects of what we're wasting on other places around the world. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that later when we get into, thrift stores and all that fun junk.
All that fun stuff, which I'm excited to talk about. I mean, just in my own, my daughter just left for college 2 weeks ago, and I went to clean her room. And yes, it's much, the room has, taken a deep breath with all of her stuff out of there. Her closet is still full. Her drawers are still full. And, she packed and went away for 3 months. So it's funny because she just walked away, and honestly, I could probably get rid of everything in her drawers and she would not miss it. And then it's like, well, how did she end up with that so much to begin with?
Yeah. And I mean, even when you think about it, us as Americans are bred to want more things to make us happy. That's just what we've learned and what we've been told, whether it be from advertising or from the people around us, or I guess your modern day example could be your Instagram influencer. We are told as consumers that we will only be happy. And it's not a direct message, it's subliminal messages all over the place. So imagine you have just flashing billboards all around you telling you that you need to buy this thing to make you happy. And this is another thing that they talk about quite a bit in the documentary, but they give the examples of cars, car advertisements where, you're living this life of luxury if you get into a BMW with your beautiful date wearing a ball gown. Or they talk about shampoo and people with you know, your L'Oreal commercial where this woman has dry, frizzy hair, and then she washes her hair with this condition. She washes her hair with their shampoo and their conditioner, and all of a sudden she has this beautiful, luxurious, healthy hair after one magical shampoo and wash. And it's just the same idea with clothing, and clothing brands do the exact same thing, whether it be directly or very subliminal marketing and messaging. A very effective thing that fast fashion brands do is that they market lifestyles, they don't market products. And so when you think about, I mean, one of the most notable brands that ever did this, they got in a whole bunch of trouble for doing it, is Abercrombie and Fitch. They were very much a lifestyle brand. And in the mid 2000s, when they were at their peak popularity, they got in a whole bunch of trouble because they basically went to sororities and fraternities to recruit people who fit their brand image, profiling people, but they wanted those people as their customers. And so they basically groomed their customers to then think, if I buy this piece of clothing, then I'm all of a sudden going to look like an Abercrombie model. Or
Nick warned me that, Nick, I think your connection's like going out. He told us this won't happen.
Can you hear me? Boy.
I'm losing you, honey.
Okay, give me a second.
So Nick gave me the heads up before we started that this could happen with his connection. So he's a little bit frozen. But yeah, I remember with Abercrombie, you know, I feel like Abercrombie was the polar opposite of body positivity, you know, what we know today and the way that companies are being so much more inclusive. Abercrombie was the height of the opposite.
Okay, am I back?
Are you back? Your voice is.
Okay, can you hear me?
It's
can you
better.
see me?
Yes, I see movement.
Oy vey, I don't know why it's doing this.
I can hear you, but I'm not seeing you. I got you. I got you. I'm going to say hi to people. Okay, you're back. You're good.
I'm back. I'm good.
It's Lori's connection. Oh gosh, they're saying it's my connection.
Okay.
How are we doing now? Are we back? Are we back? Question mark.
Are we back? Am I good? Because I'm freaking out because I thought it was me.
Don't freak out. Don't freak out. I can hear fine. Lori's dragging. Ooh. You're good. Okay. I can hear both of you.
Let us know in the chat if we're losing it.
Okay. I'm sorry. You know what's funny is I am upstairs in my bedroom on this side of the house, and our Wi-Fi is in the office downstairs on that side of the house. So I always feel like up here, but I think we're doing okay. Okay. So I just wanted to say, so Abercrombie, I feel like was the polar opposite, was like the opposite of body positivity, body inclusivity. Like they were the polar opposite back and they were, I feel like they're like when we hit rock bottom with all of that. And then as a result of their mishap that we kind of came out, and then there were some companies like American Eagle, I believe, you know, where they stopped like touching up the 15-year-old girls in their model in their advertisements.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing because that the fashion industry is inherently kind of awful. And they don't change unless they have to. Mm-hmm. Unless their audience demands that they change. And so that change people want to see real people modeling their clothes, and so American Eagle was one of the first companies to utilize multiple size models in their listings for, say, their jeans. So they might have a size 0, a size 8, and a size 14. And you can see each one of those people because they discovered that has a direct impact on their sales. So because a lot of people,
helpful being like a size 14 person, like everything looks good on a size 2 woman, in my opinion, or most things, you know what I mean? So it's so nice to see bigger models.
Yes, for sure. And that was demanded by the consumer. That was an industry standard that changed, that needed to, I mean, rightfully so. I'm glad it did. And that conversation kind of stemmed from a high fashion where there were models who were quite literally only being hired if they were anorexic. And there were modeling companies quite literally like starving their models because that was the look that high fashion houses wanted. And so many places got in so much trouble for that, that they were basically forced to change. And from being forced to change, voluntary change came about.
That's crazy. This is just what you were saying, Nick. At my sorority house last year, we still had brands coming to our house in the rest of Greek Row asking for skinny blonde girls. Crazy.
Yeah, and there is a lot of problems, as many of you may know, that still happen with the fashion industry, and that's why I'm still saying that it's inherently bad. And don't get me wrong, like I have a passion for fashion. I have a passion for wanting to change in what way I could change the industry and make it better. And yeah, there are still really shady things that happen, and really terrible things that still happen, especially relating to what we're talking about, sustainability. And we can get back on that track.
Right. Well, with regards, I mean, I think we can all agree that there has been a positive change as far as body inclusivity in the industry, and that I feel like has become the norm now. There's no shock value in seeing a plus size woman on the cover of a magazine anymore, or, you know, you have brands like Good American. And I mean, the number of brands that are size inclusive seem, you know, they're just growing exponentially now. But do you think there's some hope for sustainability and like the direction we're going? Or would you say, do you think that like fast fashion is just here to stay?
I don't think fast fashion is ever going to go away, but I think that there are ways to do fast fashion better, not good, but better than before. Because unless us as Americans, or as less people in other developed countries like Canada or the UK, or Australia, change their consumption habits, nothing's going to really change. Because if there are people buying, there's always going to be people selling. That's how capitalism works. And so
if people stop buying at some level, maybe they'll stop producing so much.
Or not even stop. It all goes back to this idea of like conspicuous consumption, needing to buy more things to feel better. And I think some people are starting to break that.
I would say your generation, and I know like kids these days get such a bad rap, but I see it in my own children, and I see it in people like you, Nick. I think there has been a shift from, you know, like when I talk to my daughter about like, do you want this whatever bag? And she's like, in some cases, she's just not interested. Thrifting is cool to your generation. And I think that your generation values experiences more than stuff. I mean, at least I see it in my children. Like if I say, you know, do you want to go to dinner with your friends, or do you want to spend $40 on a new hoodie or whatever? 10 out of 10 times my kids will choose dinner with their friends. Like it's just, they have plenty though. So I think my kids do not like want for much, but even without, I mean, I feel like your generation really values experiences, and I like to see it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think my generation just was born without this stigma behind secondhand. I think that's one big thing driving the change in the industry, or driving people to be better, is that it's cool to buy things used for us, or it doesn't matter to us. I prefer wearing things that were pre-owned. I always, even if I find something that in a store that I like, I will always look for it online, used on Poshmark or on eBay. before I would resort to buying it new. I buy maybe 10% of my wardrobe. That's probably a stretch, was bought new.
I feel like I need to challenge myself and just like because my car is still on autopilot to TJ Maxx. As much as I appreciate thrifted, it's kind of like a zone out automatic thing for me. But yeah, I think that preference is changing. And
Yeah.
10% of your wardrobe is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I want to go back to another thing that you're saying, because I think it's really relevant, is experience-based experiences. So this is another thing that's really interesting about how retail has changed in the last 5 to 10 years. I would say more so in the last 5 years than anything.
Mm-hmm.
How the retail industry is changing, and I think this is directly leading to better change, is that consumers are demanding experiences over specific products. People want to go into a store to experience something rather than simply go in to buy everything. And that's where you're seeing companies that traditionally have always existed, have always been successful, falling off the roadmap, and other companies coming in and providing new coming in and occupying a slice of the market. I'll use JCPenney and Kohl's as an example. Two companies that in a lot of people's minds are very similar. JCPenney is now bankrupt. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They're closing a bajillion stores. Kohl's is not. JCPenney never changed.
Yeah,
they always just kind of relied on this, we're going to make a bajillion different things. We're going to mark them down dirt cheap. It's going to be marked down 70% off, and then you buy 4 more things, and then you get an additional 50% off, and then you get a 5 off 10 at the counter. But like that doesn't drive people into your store, whereas you have a place like Kohl's. And it may not be an experience like you would necessarily think about it, but one of the things Kohl's did that was just genius was partnering with Amazon. So now you can go bring your Amazon return to Kohl's, and they'll ship it back to Amazon for you. And when you bring that return into Kohl's, they're going to hand you a coupon that says you get 25% off anything you want in the store. And
Nick, I had no idea they were affiliated with Amazon.
Well, they're not affiliated with Amazon.
Or they honor the.
Yeah, they work with them.
Yeah, they work with. Yeah.
And so it's just something really interesting to think about. So now people have a reason to go to Kohl's apart from just shopping, but now they're handing you this coupon, and their success rate is insane. It has like a 35 to 40% success rate of getting somebody in the store to buy something. I was so in January, I went to a conference, and Kohl's was one of the people that I actually got to tour their New York City headquarters and one of their stores. And so a district manager was running.
I'm so glad you came on my channel. You're so good.
So a district manager, well, not a district manager, like the whole region of like the Eastern United States, like bigwig, like person, was going through how this thing has basically saved them. Apart from other, I mean, Kohl's also has done things style-wise, aesthetically changed to be kind of from this like frumpy grandma store to something that your mom, your daughter, your grandma, and your cousins can all shop at once and find stuff, and you can get your shirt and your cooking supplies all in one place. Yeah. And so that's just an example of a bigger company or like a department store changing. But let's even talk about department stores. Let's talk about Nordstrom versus Bloomingdale's.
Okay.
So let's talk about Barney's New York, because they closed. Nordstrom versus Barney's New York. Nordstrom, I don't know if you've been in a Nordstrom in the last like 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've noticed how they've changed everything. There's so much more technology integrated. Their dressing rooms, you have custom lighting that you can change. They have mirrors you can walk by that show you all the information of the pieces. You can pull out your app in the Nordstrom store and say, I want this thing, and an employee will come and bring it to you.
My gosh.
Or if you see an item in a Nordstrom store that they don't have your size, you can scan the barcode and it'll be shipped to your house, or you can pick it up there every week. Or you can order something from your phone to Nordstrom, and they'll be in a cubby, and you walk up to the person and say, "This is my order," and they'll grab your order, and you'll be out the door. It's all experience-based versus the old department store style, like, say, your Barney's New York, your Bloomingdale's, where you're just going in, you're going to have a client advisor, you're going to have some person in a black outfit helping you out, but people don't necessarily want that anymore. People want to help themselves.
No, I would completely agree. And just sidebar is that Nordstrom has all the restaurants in there too. So like I would walk through our Nordstrom when I worked at American Girl just to go have their chicken Caesar salad, and that would get me in the store. And that in and of itself was an experience just walking through. But when I worked at American Girl, we had an experience department. And you know, the people would run craft tables, and even when I worked in the doll hair salon, that was an experience for people. We had a bistro in our store, and we ran birthday parties, and all of that was part of the experience. And I believe that Disney tried to even branch out and have some experience-based stores. And we just found that added so much value to the girls, and the average of time that people spent in our store would increase, you know, depending on what events we had going in the store. We had Santa Claus come in and people could come in for free, but we had author signings, and there was always something going on that was more than just coming in and buying dolls and outfits. So the experience was something that our store, we focused on all the time, you know. Lisette, thank you so much. Oh, he really is. You are getting so much love in the comments, Nick. I have to go through and read some. Lisette, I am so sad that I missed your Instagram live tonight. And did you say that you couldn't record it? Because I wanted to go back. I was at Qdoba on a hot date with my husband, and that's why I missed
God bless Qdoba.
I freaking love Qdoba.
Okay, I'm just going to be nostalgic for just not nostalgic, but just like, so the only Qdoba that's around where I live is on my college campus. And so... And I can't go to my college campus.
How far is your campus from your house?
20 minutes.
Okay.
So it's whatever, but and I could go there, it's open, but it's just like, because my classes are all online, and so I'm not going to be on campus, and so it's like,
we're going to have to take a ride for it.
Yeah, I'll just drive down there.
It was such a sweet thing. Where is it? You bring so much to the table. The fact that you're so young and so extremely knowledgeable about fashion brands trends. I'm telling you, I have too. Thank you. Yes.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of love here. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, I don't know if he mentioned, but Nick is 19 years old, and I started following him when he was 18 in Thrift. But how many years did you do your age? And I listened to you on Denali's podcast.
Yeah, so I started my Instagram like 2 weeks. So I started it when I was 15, but it was like 2 weeks before I turned 16. And so I actually was like originally 15 in Thrift, and then I was 16 in Thrift, and then I was 17 in Thrift.
Amazing.
And I was 18 in Thrift.
That's when I found you.
And then when I turned 19, I rebranded myself to NCI Resale because I
meant to do this one.
I wanted to, basically, I kind of wanted to highlight the teen resellers in the community and give them the spotlight now instead of me having it. Because not to say I was like the quintessential like teenage reseller, but I was definitely like what everybody was like, he is the young reseller. And so I kind of wanted to pass that on to some of the other amazing young resellers out there in the world. And the story behind my name is kind of fun. Basically, it's when I was 11, I started reselling when I was 11. If any of you are new here, I would bring things from garage sales to Plato's Closet, and I was making, like $50 to $100 a month doing that. And so I was like, I am a real business. And so I took this piece of like cardstock poster paper, and I wrote Nick's Clothing Incorporated on it, and I made like the NCI really, really big. And so that was how I got my name. Is I had always had that piece of paper hanging on the back of my office door, and so when I was searching for a new name, that's just kind of, I went back to what I was before. Am I the one breaking up, or are you? Are we okay?
Oh, man, I'm having trouble.
Okay.
Hey, Jay. The Wi-Fi is dying on us up here in the middle of my live.
Can people still hear me? I can keep talking if the comments. Can
What?
people hear?
I know, but it's not working.
It's Lori. Lori. It's okay.
This has never happened to me before. I'm just wondering if it's the side of the room that I'm on. Is that any better?
I'm an
Because
omen.
I can see me going blurry.
I can hear you fine.
I can see me going blurry on YouTube, but
on your desktop you can.
Okay.
Do 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 do.
So I have the StreamYard on my lap background just to see where we're at on YouTube, and I'm blurry on YouTube, but I'm clear on my StreamYard in front of me.
I love that for you.
And see, you're frozen on StreamYard to me, Nick.
Okay. Because they all say they can hear me and see me. Can you all see me? Can you see me okay? Am I frozen? Am I glitchy?
Let's move to a new location. Hold up, friends.
She's on the move. She's going.
What? Is that any better? I'm not going to have lighting and stuff. But any better? Oh my gosh, this is terrible. There's a booster up there. Can you come boost it for me?
Thank you, everybody who's hanging in here. I understand the struggle of technical difficulties. And so
I've never had an issue with a live before, so I'm kind of embarrassed. This is terrible.
It's my fault.
No.
I'll just take the blame. It's my fault. It's my...
No. All right, I'm in my office. Is this any better?
Yeah, you're already clearer to me.
Yeah, see, now I'm downstairs in my office where I always am, but the lighting is horrific down here, but oh well.
Well,
are we better?
Yeah.
I've aged like 30 years. Okay. Who's still with us? Thank you, everybody. Are we good?
You're good. They're saying you're good.
All right. All right. I want to shift gears a little bit because one of the things I specifically wanted to talk about tonight, Nick, was sustainable fashion brands and their accessibility or lack of accessibility to people in lower socioeconomic brackets, so to speak. So for people who may only have enough money to shop at Forever 21, but or maybe they're thrifting or whatever, but I guess I wanted you to speak to the whole white privileged women talking about how important sustainability is when they have easy access to it. How sustainable fashion or just any of it in general.
Yeah, no. I totally understand what you're saying. I think that it's really easy for somebody who has a bunch of money to say, you shouldn't talk. You can't shop at fast fashion. If you shop at Forever 21, you are single-handedly causing the death of the environment and sweatshop conditions overseas. And that's just a horrible thing to say. It's a horrible thing to accuse somebody of saying.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, sustainable fashion has, I'm not going to say it's become elitist because that I truly don't believe that, but I do believe that's how some people view it. And I think that's part of the reason that people view it as inaccessible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's this whole narrative around sustainable fashion that I think needs to change about what is sustainable fashion, because I think a lot of people, and this isn't just fashion, it's also about sustainable energy, sustainable resources.
I think it applies to everything. I think it applies to the people who shop at their big box grocery store versus the people who can shop at Whole Foods every week. I think it's, who can put, solar panels on their house and those who can't, I think it goes across.
Who can buy a Tesla and who can't?
Exactly. And so these are things that I struggle with. See, now we're going to have the dog. Oh my gosh. All right. I'm going to try to go back upstairs or at least get the light. Can you grab my little light from upstairs? and bring it down to me and get her out of here. Yeah, no, this is one of the main things I wanted to talk about tonight.
Yeah. And also, don't be self-conscious of your dog. My big yellow lab is probably going to come body slam my bedroom door at some point, because that's what he does when he doesn't get his way. But yeah, like I was saying, I think there's a whole narrative shift that needs to happen. And I think the best way people can be sustainable is by buying less clothing. So if your only option is to shop at fast fashion, then fine, do it. But don't continually shop at fast fashion. If you're going to buy things, say, if you're going to buy a whole new wardrobe at Zara, wear that stuff, wear it proud, but wear it for a long time.
I feel like Zara would last a decent amount of time. I mean,
or buy things. I think fashion at this point in time is at a place where people can buy very classic pieces, very basic pieces. And there's this whole idea of building a capsule wardrobe, which I don't have a capsule wardrobe by any means, but I know people who do. And this is funny. Sorry, this next comment that came in, the full moon comment, that's funny.
Chloe, where are you? New England Betty Boop, yes. I think there is. Thank you, Jay. My husband just got my lighting and closed the door and took care of the dogs. He's trying.
Sorry, I got distracted. Train of thought. Come on, back on the rails, Nick. But what I was saying is that I think people can be more sustainable by using the stuff that they already have and not continuing this or buying into this 52-week fashion cycle, which is what places like Zara are famous for. And that's how fast fashion changed the fashion industry. The fashion industry went from having the traditional 4 seasons or 8 fashion cycles a year. It used to be the 4 main things were fall, winter, summer, and spring.
Right.
And then there were 4 intermittent ones: pre-fall, pre-winter, pre-spring, and pre-summer. And then some brands, when that wasn't enough, then they added cruise and one other one where I can't think of that. And so that's how the fashion calendar got developed. But then Zara kind of came on the scenes. Places like Zara and H&M came out. Those were like the two if you could think of like the 2 pioneers of the fast fashion moment. Well, actually, let's talk about. There's 4
Primark or
Primark.
That's one of
Zara, H&M, and Uniqlo.
Oh yeah, Uniqlo got mentioned in one of the documentaries.
Were like the 4 things. And Zara is a Spanish company. Primark, H&M is also a Spanish company. Primark's a British company, and then Uniqlo is a Japanese company. And so these 4 companies they didn't get together, but they all kind of developed the same thing at the same time and profited off the same people. But they were like, this isn't working for us. We need to find a way to satisfy people's needs on the front end instead of the back end. And so they specialize in super trendy pieces that come out before the trend is even trendy. And that's how they're so successful, is that they
in a sense they're ripping off things from the runway and making people who don't have the money to spend on pieces that would cost as much as they would, and mimicking them in acrylic and in synthetic material. What the okay, I thought I lost you, Nick. You were just quiet for a second.
No, it's I was listening.
Okay. I'm like, wait a second, he froze. No. Yeah, so somebody's mentioning Everlane, and I love Everlane too, and I had never stepped foot into an Everlane until they just built the one in Boston, and it was supposed to open in March, and obviously it didn't. And then I went as soon as they opened, and the store is beautiful, but I really look at those pieces. I bought 2 pairs of pants that I haven't even taken the tags off of yet, because I feel, they were And their pants weren't expensive. I bought a silk blouse for $85, which I then returned because I said I'm going to destroy the silk blouse. And then I bought 2 pairs of pants for like 110 or something. But I'm really like waiting for the moment to wear those pants because I just feel like I haven't spent $55 on a pair of pants in a while. I mean, I spend it on Lululemon way too much, but like on pants, like wide leg, like khaki pants. That's not even a look for me, but these felt so great. But Everlane is a company that I do feel like is changing people and educating people.
So I have a lot of thoughts about this. This is something I could talk about a lot.
Well, that's why you're here.
So, so there are two companies that come to mind for this concept right now, Everlane and Reformation. And what these two companies both did was they decided that they wanted to take the fast fashion cycle and make it sustainable. And so both of those companies tried to more Reformation way more than Everlane, but they both said, all right, Zara's going to do 52 weeks fashion cycle. We're going to do 52-week fashion cycle too, but we're going to do it with recycled material, pay our workers a fair wage and good working conditions, and make it accessible make it at an accessible price point for people to buy.
But it's still 52 weeks, you're saying.
Well, but in this the idea of the 52-week fashion cycle is that there's constantly new things coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And Zara pioneered this. They talk about it. One of Zara's things that they're able to do is they're able to make a product go from an idea to being on the shelves in a store in 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
Do you want to talk about how things that shouldn't be able to happen? That's one of them.
As far as just how it gets produced so quickly and in the developing countries and the people, like the around the clock work that has to be done to move it that fast.
And the incredibly low price that it has to be made at, production costs it has to be made at for them to turn a profit. But I'll go back to what I was saying. So then Reformation, who was founded by what's her name, Yaya Alfalo or something like that. She was a model,
mm-hmm.
and she saw the damage that was being done by the fast fashion industry, and so she created her brand to counter that. Everlane is a DTM or a DTC, not DTM, direct to consumer brand, and I'll talk about that in just a second too. But it was they were created with the same intention in different ways. So I'll go back to what I was saying. Direct to consumer brands, if you're not familiar with that, what that is it's a brand that owns all of the means of its production and sale. Mm-hmm. And so they control everything from the production of their goods to the putting on the tickets to the selling it in the store. And so some of these brands include Everlane, Rothy's, mm-hmm. MM LaFleur, Warby Parker glasses.
Would you say Teeks is in that category?
Yeah, Teeks, Glossier. Mm-hmm. I could think of more. I just need to take a second. But these brands, and so this is a way more sustainable way of production because it allows these companies to be completely transparent with their practices because they own all of the means of production. Mm-hmm. So I'll use Everlane for an example. They have the address of the factory that the item of clothing was produced in on the label of whatever it is. So I have a pair of Everlane sweatpants that I'm looking at that are across the room from me.
Yeah.
And they were made in a town in China. I'm not going to grab them, but they were made in a town in China and has the address of the factory. And you can go on their website and it'll show updated conditions of the factory, workers, their wages, what the minimum wage where they work is, what they're paying, what a living wage where there is. They have all of that information. And so that is a way that that they can be held accountable, mm-hmm. and that they can still provide a service and they can still provide goods at a cost that is way more accessible than, say, some of the higher end fashion brands that are really sustainable. But yeah, so that's just an interesting thing that has come about in the last 5 years, much because of the internet and social media.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it comes down to the type of clothing that they're using, as far as the impact on the earth has. That Eileen Fisher is a good example of somebody with organic cotton and linen and fabrics that will eventually break down.
Yeah.
There was a documentary on Amazon that I just started to watch, but he had two similar sweaters side by side, and one of them was like, has the flammable warning on it, which is just crazy to me. And he lit a match to it, and this garment just like went up in flames, and then he burned through another garment that like made a hole, but it didn't like it. Just the terrible and the stench, he said, from the chemicals that were used. And then in the countries where these garments are being produced, I think it was in India that they focused on the true cost. There's a river in northern India.
Leather, yeah. And the fact that leather goods, cheap leather,
that was the part.
Chromium to tan leather, and how the groundwater supply is so contaminated with chromium that people have developmental disorders, people have cancer.
So many children are being born, and oh my gosh, it was terrible, Nick, terrible.
Yeah, no, and so it's funny that you bring up Eileen Fisher, because I was going to talk about her at some point tonight.
I know you love Eileen, so
I do. I love Eileen. I love Eileen as a person. I love Eileen as a brand, and I love selling me some Eileen. But Eileen Fisher was basically the first person in the fashion industry to talk about sustainability. When she started her brand, that was the goal. Before it was cool, before it was trendy, before it was a thing that was talked about, Eileen Fisher said, we need to focus on this. And so, she has a TED Talk. You can watch her TED Talk. She has information on her website. There's all sorts of stuff about Eileen Fisher that is super, super cool. She's just a really cool person and a really cool designer. Another really cool designer to listen to talk about sustainability is Stella McCartney.
Ooh, I didn't know that about her.
Stella McCartney is probably on the forefront of high fashion and sustainability in high fashion, because do you want to talk about something that has this guise of being sustainable? Because people think it has to be sustainable because it's expensive.
What's that?
Like high fashion in general.
Oh, just high fashion in general. No, I think they're some of the biggest culprits as far as, I know that at American Girl, we would, cut things up and put them in trash bags before we would discount them. And it would the workers, we would cry. It was terrible. Some of the stuff that they would sell to employees, but other things, instead of it being discounted or sent anywhere, and that was a doll company. So I know Burberry and certain high fashion.
Yeah, so fashion, it's often referred to as fashion's dirty little secret. They don't talk about it. But companies like Burberry and Louis Vuitton, instead of selling their overstock merchandise or their last season merchandise at a discounted price, they burn it. To not let it bring down their value.
Right. Think about that.
Just think about that. Yes, exactly. They burn millions of dollars of merchandise a year. Yeah. And if that just doesn't infuriate you, I don't know what.
There's
so many things wrong. Again, this goes back to, I don't like the fashion industry, and I think it's bad and is deceptive and lies and whatever.
You love it, but you hate it.
I love it and I hate it. I love that I could maybe make a difference in it someday, but hate the fact that it's so inherently bad and evil. Just like a lot of things in the world.
But don't you think that with all of the buzz about sustainable fashion and these documentaries that are coming out and just the consumer being more educated, don't you think at some point it's going to be a bit of a wake-up call for companies like Burberry? I even feel again, with your generation, to me, I remember when I got my first Coach bag when I was a young mom, and I thought it was the end-all be-all thing. I went to Kennebunkport in Maine to the outlet before they had an outlet brand. and it was $170 for a like old school bucket Coach bag. And I thought that was the last bag I would ever want in my life. And it was a really, really, really big deal. I don't think kids care that much about things like that now. So I wonder if this next wave, this next generation, I mean, I guess it's just different things they care about. It's different brands, I guess. Maybe it's just the brands that are changing, but the mindset is still there. But I don't know. I feel like it's changing. I feel like high fashion, big makeup, big everything is just, everything's toned down. And I think the pandemic is just going to tone it down even more as far as what we need.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's a lot to unpack in what you just said.
Yes.
I'll try to do this in chunks. I think I think sustainability more than ever before is in the minds of consumers. More people care about it than ever before, and more companies are doing stuff about it than ever before. But there is, again, this has a name, and apparently I just can't remember names again. But
I can't help you now because my notes are upstairs.
There's a lot of public opinion polling where people have been asked, or consumers have been asked, would you be willing to spend more to be sustainable? Or how important is sustainability to you in buying clothes? And would you, and a lot of it comes down to, would you be willing to pay more to buy a sustainable alternative to, say, Forever 21, Zara, H&M? And the vast majority of people say yes, but that does not translate into the actual actions of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so the opinions there, it's really just swaying people's actions. But I also think becoming like complacent in the idea that companies are doing, H&M has H&M sustainable collection, or conscious, H&M conscious collection.
Do you believe that? I don't.
No, it's called greenwashing. And so that's why I think it's dangerous to think that companies are going to do this because they really care about the environment, because these giant companies don't care about anything other than their bottom line. And so they're not going to do something that would inherently make them lose money in their minds. And so a lot of companies have found it profitable to say things like, we're doing this is our sustainable practice. And so I'm H&M, and I'm going to have H&M conscious collection in my store, when really H&M conscious collection stuff is just made out of 10% recycled materials, and 90% polyester, still made in the same conditions that all of their other clothes are made, and still selling at $5, because honestly, there will never be a sustainable garment of clothing that costs $12.99 in a store. It just won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's at a thrift store. Buy secondhand if you can, because there's nothing more sustainable than buying something that's already been purchased before.
Well, and at some point we should probably bridge into that, because it's already been an hour, Nick. You have to let me know how long you can stay here. And to everybody who's still here, we probably should open it up to questions in a little bit too. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We're at 100 people right now. And I just want to make sure that I'm so bad as the moderator here, because I'm mesmerized by what Nick is saying, but I do want to answer some questions here. So let's just start over. If you have questions, let me know and I'll pop them up there. But I do want to talk about thrifting too. And kind of to circle back to the comment about is sustainable fashion for the privileged? And I mean, in my eyes, people who are shopping at thrift stores are living a sustainable life there as far as, their shopping goes. If they're not buying new, I think that's sending a very strong message, even if they're buying Forever 21 at a thrift store.
Well, yeah, if you're anything at a thrift store, whether it be Forever 21, H&M, or it's like you find Gucci and Prada at a thrift store, like it's sustainable to buy things that have already been purchased before, because you're effectively buying something that would otherwise have been discarded, thrown away. Like, what are the other options? And so buying things at thrift stores is 100-fold whatever more sustainable than buying something new. Now, again, it's interesting, and the documentary brought this up, is that to put in perspective how much we buy as Americans, and how much we get rid of.
Mm,
on average, 10% of what gets donated to charity ends up being sold in a charity.
right. So just to put Joe's, yeah, so that means 90% of what is donated to charity ends up in landfills, ends up in developing countries. Only 10% of what we donate actually gets sold at the thrift.
And
That blew my mind as well.
that's a stat that I like to share with people, especially people who try to like gatekeep thrifting. There's a lot of talk about, especially again amongst my generation. Let's talk about this really quick. About, I'm sure you're aware of what happened. There was a TikTok that blew up of somebody talking about how resellers were stealing from the poor by thrifting, and people who thrift are effectively tearing things away, ruining it for everybody else. And I think that comes from a fundamental misunderstanding about the function of a thrift store, and also from a scarcity mindset. And I don't think people should think in a scarcity mindset when thinking about donated goods, because there is quite literally a never-ending supply of stuff for thrift stores. I mean, for people who don't know me, I am a bins shopper. I love shopping at the Goodwill outlet. I think there's no more of an eye-opening experience about the amount of stuff that we go through than going to the Goodwill outlet.
Yeah,
because where I live in Minneapolis. We have 3 Goodwill outlets in the metro area, and all 3 of them are big. I maybe like 100 boats in each, like big bins in each one, maybe, and they're rows, and they switch out. At all 3 of them, they switch out a row every 15 minutes. So let's say they switch out 20 bins every 15 minutes, 8 hours a day, 360 days a year.
So where do they go once the rotation is over, Nick?
So the stuff is, and I'm just speaking for Goodwill because I actually know quite a bit about their supply chain and whatever. I've talked to people in high up positions at Goodwill. But everything that doesn't sell at the outlet is baled. And so it's made in those big, like, compressed cubes with big bands around them, and they're sold to third-party distributors. And the stuff is either, for the most part, downcycled, so shredded up, made into insulation or like floor padding. If you've ever seen that, like rolls of stuff that's like multicolors, that's your old shredded clothes. Or they're bought by brokers who then ship it to places around the world, often developing countries or traditionally poorer countries. And that's a whole nother issue in of itself, because when clothing goes from here to those countries, a lot of Americans like to think, oh, we're helping them.
Right.
We are being of a help to people because we're giving these people who we believe are in need our clothes. In reality, they don't want them. And these clothes have, in a way, destroyed the economies of so many countries. The True Cost talks about a woman in Haiti. They follow the woman who upcycles clothing in Haiti. Yes. And it's not just Haiti. It's India. It's Cambodia. It's the Bahamas. It's places all over the place. Ecuador, Guatemala, where these clothes get sent, and these people now have access to this clothing for so cheap that they no longer can sell their own clothing and stimulate their own economy, because effectively you have a product that's so cheap, it's so much cheaper to get clothing from overseas than it is to produce it yourself. And I always talk about it when I'm describing this to people in terms of corn in the US, because the United States subsidizes the production of corn as a crop. And it's cheaper for people in Mexico to buy corn from the United States than it is for them to grow it and sell it themselves. And so when the United States began subsidizing corn, we effectively crashed Mexico's economy because they could no longer do it themselves and support themselves. And it's the same thing with the United States, and not just the United States and the UK and Australia sending clothes from those respective countries all over the place.
Is there any way to block the export of that? Like, why are the countries taking it if it's ruining their economy? Money. I mean, are we like sending it with money? You know what I mean? Or is it just that that's going to give there
are people earning money from it in those countries, and those people earning money from it are the people who are allowing it to happen.
And they're also the people managing these sweatshops that are, or maybe, I mean, higher up from that.
Well, and that's an interesting point you bring, because the people, let's talk about, we can talk, I could talk about, this is a whole nother thing I could talk a whole bunch about, how ingrained it is, how ingrained that this like globalized fast fashion ideology is into the world, is that people in—
1 second before you do that, I just want to highlight this that Chloe said. One of my friends came at me for walking away with 70 pounds, and I just sent him pictures of the bins in the back warehouse outside in the actual Goodwill, and he shut up. I don't think people realize how much is out there. I just thought that was interesting, Chloe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But what I was saying is that in these places, the harsh reality is that these sweatshop conditions, or these sweatshop jobs, are some of the best jobs for these people, and especially for women, and are the highest position that women can get in these countries. And it's just crazy to think about how reliant these people are. And so that's the tough reality, is that a lot of them don't want people to stop completely buying fast fashion, because that would in turn crash their economy, or what little that they do make.
Things that I was thinking in watching the women is, I feel like, all things equal, if their work conditions were just better, I think everybody would feel better about this. I mean, and obviously that's probably easier said than done, but even if the wages were still really low, even if they had to leave their children during the day and travel far to work, it seemed like it was just like the terrible conditions they were in that were really the sad part. Like, you know, when the building crashed in Bangladesh and so many people died, and it just seemed like if they could just change that part, even that would make a difference.
Yeah, and you know, I think the terms, and I had a whole class on this idea of overseas production and supply chain, and how things start there and end here, and people buy stuff there and it ends here and whatever. But it's really interesting to think about this as like a race to the bottom. That's how these companies treat their cost of goods, is that they compete, and in competing they're driving the price lower and lower and lower. And they're basically going to, the way that H&M works, for say, is that they say we want 200,000 pairs of jeans, and we want them for $1 a pair cost, and they'll go to 6 different factories, and out of fear, these factories, of losing the sale to get the money, these factories will say, well, I'll do it for 90 cents a pair, I'll do it for 85 cents a pair. And so then they're driving this down, down, and down, and down. But in order to produce the pants for that much, because you can't really budge on cost of materials,
right?
But you can budge on cost of labor, because you can just pay people less,
right?
Or you can force people to work beyond when they were supposed to work and not pay them for it, because they're paid by the day, not by the hour. It's all of these things that lock people in this cycle of poverty, because of this higher up power. So it's not necessarily the owner of the factory's fault, it's the owner and the production and buying teams of these companies' fault. It's such a deeply rooted issue.
That's why I feel so overwhelming. You just wonder if it,
think about.
Yeah, you wonder if it can ever change. And am I super naive to think, why can't H&M buy a building, like construct a new building for people? Even, like I said, all things equal, like, can they not just invest in cleaner, healthier environments for these women who are working in these places to produce their cheap clothing? I mean, it just seems like I don't know how they sleep at night, first of all. And it just seems like anybody with a conscience and access to the money, I mean, I don't know, like, make
it's infuriating. I can't say the word. It really is maddening. And it's things like thinking about the CEO of Zara, Armancio Ortega, is the 6th richest man in the world. He's worth $100 billion.
Seriously, like, build a few factories in Bangladesh. I don't get, like, to me, that seems so simple.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, the Rana Plaza disaster was tragic. It was heartbreaking. But it was the direct result of the negligence of people of high ups all the way down to managers of those
Like the
facilities.
manager.
It was just negligence, and it was sad, and that just showed that what. And it's the really sad thing is that the companies just treated these people like collateral.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was something that had to happen, and it was sad that it was something that these companies.
Because workers had reported that there were cracks in the foundation. Like everybody had said that there were issues. But aside from that tragedy, was the woman who was interviewed who started the union to kind of demand better work environments, and they locked the doors and beat the women.
Yeah, so you want to talk about that?
What did I?
It's really interesting too. This is a really interesting thing to talk about too, because so if you were to look at your clothing 20 years ago, the majority of it would have been made in China.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at clothing today, fast fashion clothing, let's say, less than 10% of it is made in China. That's because workers in China, especially workers in these things called special economic zones in China, which are basically places where capitalism is allowed in communist China. Anyway, these workers unionized, basically. They started to collectively bargain. And when that happened, these companies basically fled. They
Because
left
the price went up.
because their price went up, and then China started to regulate these companies because people were collectively bargaining to make better conditions for themselves, and the companies saw that as that's going to be more expensive for us. We're out, so they moved to Cambodia, and then in Cambodia, people started collectively bargaining, and there was a lot of pushback at first, and that's what they were talking about in the documentary. And then once Cambodia started being able to collectively bargain, now there's still lots of factories in Cambodia, they picked up and went to Bangladesh. And Bangladesh has some of the loosest regulations because Bangladesh does not barely have a functioning government.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so much that they could get away with because people in Bangladesh were already so poor.
So desperate. They're
Any,
so desperate.
any operation that they could go to make some sort of income that wasn't some other horrible thing like trafficking or prostitution, they fled to that opportunity. And it's just the sad reality of it is that these companies move to where there aren't regulations and where workers are able to be exploited the easiest.
It's just crazy. It's crazy. So I don't even know. Like some of that just has to sink in because it's just so crazy that it's happening in 2020 to the people who are the most vulnerable and who need the most assistance. It's just so sad to me. I don't know. It makes me even just reassess with thrifting. Okay, this was another thing I wanted to talk to you about: retail arbitrage. Because I know we're all hitting Nordstrom these days, and I've even thought to myself, like, damn, maybe I should tap the brakes on RA because that's not really helping the problem.
Yeah, and that's a decision that people have to make themselves.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm not judging. I'm just thinking. I'm just pondering the thought.
And it's something that we all have to think about. That's something that I've thought about many times, and I don't want people to feel guilty. You should not feel guilty if you bought something at H&M. You should not feel guilty. Hi, Mother.
Thank you for joining us, Jill. I'm so happy you're here.
Mama Jill's in the house. Anyway,
your son's amazing. You've raised such an incredible young man, and I'm learning so much from him tonight.
But anyway, RA. Nobody should feel guilty about doing RA because honestly, there's no way. I'm trying to say this sensitively. We're in a position where it's such a deeply rooted issue that by you buying 5 pairs of shoes is not going to dramatically change the system. It's more so this idea collectively as the only way that we are going to fundamentally change the way that clothing's produced is by the way that we consume and changing the way that we consume, because the American consumer has a lot of power. The world consumer has a lot of power. And by collectivizing that power, we could make a lot of difference. And I think we are moving in the right direction in that sense, but there's still so much work to be done. But I don't think, anybody should feel guilty, because honestly, even if you're buying stuff at discount stores, say Nordstrom Rack, or if you're buying pallets, you're effectively buying stuff from these companies that they don't want anymore and they could be throwing away.
That's true. They're already on the downward cycle. Yeah, they're already on their way out. No, it's just more of a personal reflection, I guess, is I could probably do more good at the thrift store, at the Goodwill outlet. Like I just went to the bins earlier this week, Nick, and I haven't been since they reopened. I've only been one time since they opened post-COVID. And, you just get into different rhythms, and I was kind of into a rhythm of shopping a lot at Savers and TJ Maxx, and I bounce all over the place. I'm not like a one mode shopper.
Neither am I.
But then I went to the bins and I was like, God, I miss this. And wow. And like low cost of goods and the little treasures and the bread and butter stuff that's still, paying some bills. And it was just refreshing to be there. It's been a long time. And and then you were coming on the show and on my channel. And so I was just like thinking about it in terms of the energy that I've spent lately on retail arbitrage. It's been profitable, but
for me too. I can't say anything because I think
we all are. We all are. I'm just, yeah, I guess it was just more of a reflection than anything. Cause I say all the time that I did not start reselling as a huge environmentalist. I would not consider myself a minimalist, a huge environmentalist, but like, as I've progressed in this career and spent more time doing this, I guess I'm feeling more of the call to be more of an activist since I have this platform now. And I always say that recycling clothes and keeping clothes out of the landfills was kind of like a perk to what I do, but it wasn't like my mission.
Well, yeah, and I think
that's shifting a little bit.
It's a good side effect.
Yes.
It's something that I think is such a good thing that comes out of other successes that people can find doing reselling. And I think it's really easy to think about, I get caught up in the, I'm only a drop in the bucket kind of mentality. Like I buy a lot from the outlet, but what I'm not buying is tons and tons of clothing. But then I think about how much I've bought over time, over the years and years that I've gone. Mm-hmm. And I've probably bought thousands of pieces of clothing at the outlet at this point that would otherwise have gotten shredded up or sent overseas or something else. So
I'm sure most of you watching today are familiar with Michelle and G over at the Bin Pickers. And I love how at the end of all of their like what sold videos, because they shop exclusively at the bins. I mean, 99.9% of their stuff comes from the bins. And I love at the end how Michelle says, they weigh their stuff and they can see just how much they paid. And, we had an 800% gain, markup, what we made on our stuff. And you hear her rattle off like this sold for $6 on eBay, this sold for $8, this sold for $7. I'm like, gosh, they're not selling it for a lot. But then at the end, she has this great number and it's all from the bins and they've made huge profit margin. And it's just kind of fun. Everybody does their what solds differently. And I always find that so interesting at the end of their videos when she gives those stats. I love it. I like wait for it at the end. Somebody this interesting, guilty? No. Can you preach about sustainability and do a big amount of RA? I think not. I don't disagree. If as far as like preaching goes, it's an interesting balance. I mean, we're all running our business the same. I always say like sometimes I get uncomfortable with the judgment of how people run their businesses different within the reselling community. And I always think to myself, Nordstrom is not calling Madewell to see how they are running their business. We are all individual business owners and we're all running our business in a way that works best for us and our family. So I try not to be judgy. Like I said, it was more of a reflection for myself.
Yeah. And I hope people don't find what I'm saying preachy, because that's not my intention.
God, no. I mean, have you read any comments, Nick?
Yeah, I know. But I just wanted to say this is I think that's again going back to what I was saying about changing the narrative about sustainability is I think it should be more of a conversation than talking down to people for shopping at fast fashion places. Because I think that's where it switches from becoming a sustainable alternative to becoming, elitist. Um, it's your influencer saying, why can't you buy this $350 dress? And I think it's just changing the narrative from, sustainability only being spending hundreds of dollars at Reformation to being going instead of buying your, basic black cardigan and jeans at H&M, maybe checking out a Goodwill before doing that or checking for stuff on Poshmark. I mean, the amount of people that I've gotten hooked on Poshmark,
Yeah.
I'm never shopping at a store again.
So it's pretty exciting. I mean, and it's really wonderful to know how much the secondhand clothing industry is going to grow over the next 2 decades. I mean, as we see malls closing, Lord & Taylor announced today that they're closing 38 stores, I believe. And some real, some of these anchor stores that have just been around forever that are now going away. So the mindset is definitely shifting. And I don't know, I think we're in a very exciting profession moving forward.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. Do you want to see if people have questions?
Yes, I think so. So it's 10:21. We'll try to wrap up around 10:30. So if anybody has questions for Nick, please feel free. Hello, Hope. Welcome, my friend. And
Hi.
I will say I just cleaned out my front closet, and I was like going through jackets and stuff. And there were 2 or 3 coats that I would say I really invested in, like coats I thought about, coats I saved up for, good quality, all that good stuff. And when I was going through the maybe 20 coats that were in my closet, it was really easy for me to say, well, yes, this is a cute trench coat, this Morona trench coat, and I like it for this, but am I ever really going to wear that over this trench coat that I invested in? And it was really easy for me to let go. And this is a little bit with the minimalist mindset. Like if you do invest in certain pieces, and it doesn't have to be super exclusive, it just may be something nice quality that, that's classic, that's going to be around forever. It was really nice for me to be able to let go of some of the cute pieces that just were not at the caliber of the other coats in my closet. So I think there were 3 or 4 coats that I'm like, I'm with you, and I'll be with you for some time, and I let go of the other pieces.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think somebody asked this question earlier, but somebody just asked, can I break down a couple ways that you can be more sustainable? And I think I just saw this one, which reminded me of this. And I think just a couple like little things that people can change in their shopping habits or in their everyday life is that one of the biggest things I think that I do is I practice the 24-hour rule. And so before I buy something, I wait a day and think, do I really want this? Or if I'm going to think about it, or if I'm going to wear it. And that really, especially for things that are new, I think can help people buy shop less impulsively.
I like that, Nick. I purposely don't keep my credit card to memory, so that when I'm shopping online, if it's something that I want, I have to like physically get up, get the credit card and enter it. And honestly, 8 times out of 10, I forget about it. Like I don't get up, I don't buy it. It was just window shopping impulse, and then it passes. So I like that 24-hour rule.
Yeah. And I think another thing is buying classic pieces and building, maybe not going as extreme as building a capsule wardrobe, but building a wardrobe of pieces that aren't necessarily super trendy. Or if you are going to buy pieces that are super trendy, maybe trying to find a vintage or pre-owned alternative instead buying like a Zara or an H&M blouse, because fashion is truly cyclical and things come back and go back, and you can find every trendy thing that's trendy right now at a thrift store. If you walked into an Urban Outfitters and a Goodwill, I guarantee you can find the same.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yep. No, that's great advice. Is there one place we can find specific designers that are sustainable, like Eileen Fisher? I'm just thinking I would probably start with Google, but
Yeah,
is
I don't know if
there
there's
a
a
sustainable
specific
brand?
resource, but it's pretty clear. If you look at mission statements of companies' websites, it's very clear a lot of the time to see what they stand for. I mean, I can list off a couple that are really great off the top of my head.
Go for it.
Patagonia,
Oh, yeah.
incredible company.
Yeah.
Eileen Fisher, Everlane, Reformation, Amor Vert, a lot of like you can Google it. If you Google direct to consumer brands, a ton will pop up.
Okay.
If you Google, even if you Google sustainable fashion, you'll get like a ton of different things that pop up. I think they're way more accessible now than they ever have been before.
And I even think just shopping secondhand. That's like a great tip, which I feel like probably most people in this chat are already doing. But Nick, do other students in your program at school resell? He probably has some disciples there.
So this is funny. So I don't know if I've mentioned this already or not. I go to the University of Minnesota, which is a massive school, ginormous, 52,000 students.
Wow.
It's like the 10th biggest university in the country. But my specific program is a super selective program where I only have 55 people in my major in each year. And so there's 220 people total in my major at any given time.
Wow, Nick.
And
it's crazy. Good for you.
Which is super then nice because you graduate knowing basically everybody. Like I know most people who are my year and my major, like on a first name basis, even if I'm not like friends with them. And so there are other people who do not to the extent that I do it. Because I mean, if you know me, you know, I run like a full scale business, doing stuff, but lots of people, not lots, but several people, run successful Depop accounts. Depop is really, really popular amongst people who are like Gen Z people or people who are my age.
Yeah.
It's definitely a whole nother beast, and I would not recommend it.
Really? I guess that's a discussion for another day. That's what my son, my college student who's 21, keeps saying, why don't you sell in Depop, Mom? I'm like, I don't know. I think I might be too old.
Yeah, it's just like, you know how if you started on Poshmark and then you went over to eBay and eBay seemed like a horribly weird thing that,
yes.
Or would people who sell on eBay start on Posh? It's like, you know how eBay is just a whole different beast? Depop is a whole different beast.
Yeah.
And navigating it, figuring it out. But that's a conversation for a different day. But yes.
Whatever your main platform is what becomes second nature and everything else feels a little bit foreign, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, am I missing any questions here? Directory. Oh, thank you, Daniela. There's a directory of sustainable brands. Jill and I talked about it in thank you. Girlfriend Collective is sustainable. Hello, Tiff and Hugo. Did I miss you guys?
Girlfriend Collective is owned by Reformation. Fun fact. So
that is interesting. What else do we have here? Anybody else with questions?
Ask me questions. I'm here. And if you ever have questions about this stuff, you can always DM me on Instagram. If you don't follow me, it's the same username that's on the screen here. And I think she put my information in the description here. So feel free to always send me a message or comment on one of my YouTube videos. I'm definitely faster about getting back to my Instagram DMs though.
Yeah. And I would definitely recommend taking in, you know, if you have some time, it's a great background thing to watch The True Cost to just, you know, shed a little light if you want more information from that standpoint. But yeah. All right, Nick. Well, I think we will wrap it up here. You could build a shed. I'm missing a conversation here.
My mom complained about my stuff in her house.
Being in her, I think I did see her say it's in his parents' garage.
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff right now.
You have great parents. These are also the same parents that like brought you to like storage lockers to buy when you were 14 years old. That episode with Denali was so much fun. I loved it. Thank you, Jill. Well, anyways, Nick, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It was so fun. I love talking about this stuff. It was so great to be on.
I really appreciate it. And I wanted to make a point to make sure we dedicated the whole time to this topic because I feel like this is like the tip of the iceberg, but your knowledge is very deep. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that I see on sustainable fashion is kind of tip of the iceberg and catchphrases and, what did you call it? Greenwashing?
Yeah, greenwashing.
I feel like there's just like a lot of buzz, but I really wanted a night where we could dig deep and get some substance out of it. And I think everybody would agree in the chat that that's just what we got tonight. So I can't thank you enough for being here. And if you guys want to tell your friends, they can come back and watch it. Nick is so great. And this will be on my YouTube channel. And please subscribe to Nick and his YouTube channel. You're monetized now, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's monitored because there are commercials and I can't wait to just see what he bought in his halls. But he has a great eye for fashion and his knowledge just keeps on going and it's just going to keep growing. And I can't wait to see what you do in the future, Nick. So thank you so much. Everybody, I appreciate you being here tonight and I will see you all soon. Good night, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you for watching.
Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. Thanks for hanging in. Bye, everybody. Nick, you're a rock star.